Welcome to a series of grammar lectures on Biblical Hebrew. Today we'll be looking at the vowels. This is a snapshot of where we're headed. There's quite a lot of information because the system of vowel pointings is quite complex, but this is not information that I require you to memorize. I will never quiz you on the vowels, and I will never require you to write using the vowels. As far as learning to read, I'll always give you a Hebrew text that has the vowel pointings included. And as far as how to pronounce those words, I'll always give you audio for how to pronounce. And as you practice with this, listening and imitating over weeks and months, you'll be able to naturally imbibe this system, and you'll be able to read quite intuitively. All right, let's begin by looking at what's called the full vowels. This chart is the whole inventory of vowel sounds in Hebrew. Hebrew, like English, has 5 types of vowels: A, E, I, O, and U. Let's begin by looking at the A-type vowels. There are 2 of these, the long vowel kametz, the short vowel patach, and both of these are pronounced ah, as in father, with modern pronunciation. The long and short vowel distinction is from biblical times, where all long and short vowel pairs were pronounced distinctly. But it's no longer a distinction made in modern Hebrew, so it's a far more simple system to learn. Here's the E-type vowels, serre and segol, and both say e as in bed. At least that's the default. The serre, in some contexts, can lengthen to say a. It can lengthen to say a before a guttural, so an aleph, ein, he, or chet, but the default for these vowels is to say e. There's one I-type vowel, chirik, and it says e as in machine. There's 2 O-type vowels, a cholam and a kametz chatuf, and both say o. Now, each of these vowels is written underneath the letter that it corresponds to, except for the cholam is written on top of the consonant and slightly to the left. All other vowels are written underneath the consonant. Another thing to say is this kametz chatuf is exactly the same symbol as this kametz. So if you see this symbol, it can be the A-type vowel, ah. It can be the O-type vowel, o. How would you know? Yes, you will hear how it's read, and you should be a good imitator. As far as what to expect the kametz. The kametz chatuf is a pretty rare vowel. To finish off the chart, we have one U-type vowel pronounced oo. This is called a kibitz. So whether the vowel is a long or short, that distinction doesn't really matter. Whether it's an A, E, I, O, or U vowel, take note of that. It matters for pronunciation. It matters for what word this is and what it means. But don't worry so much about whether it's long or short. It'll have no payoff as far as what the word means or even how to pronounce it. But something to take note of is whether one of those vowels has reduced. So here is a chart of the reduced vowel. The default form of the reduced vowel is a shva, 2 dots, one on top of the other, and it is a light, a hurried pronunciation like as in excuse. I say default because this is the form the reduced vowel takes if it's written under 19 out of 23 consonants, but if it's written under a guttural, it'll take one of 3 other forms. And these forms are derived from which full vowel it's reduced from. So if it's reduced from an A-type vowel, it's called a Furtive Patach. You got a patach and then the shva written on the right, and we call that a Furtive Patach. If it's reduced from an E-type vowel, you have the segol, the shva on the right. We call this a Furtive segol. If it's reduced from an O-type vowel, we have the kametz chatuf, that rare O-type vowel with a shva on the right, and we call it a chatef kametz chatuf. Now, you should think of this as one reduced vowel that can take one of 4 different forms. And noting it can be important. It can be important from distinguishing between a word that says he did it and a word that says you do it. So when you're reading, it's important if you know if someone's making a statement or giving a command. As far as how to identify those kinds of things, that's a later lecture, but just to note, if a vowel reduces, that can be important. All right, the rest of the vowels, these are called vowel letters. So what are these? These are 3 letters that were used sometimes not to indicate consonant sound, but to indicate a vowel sound. So one of these is the hey, and the hey was used to be able to indicate one of 3 different sounds, an A-type sound, an E-type sound here, or an O-type sound here. You have the vav, which could indicate one of 2 different sounds, an O-type sound and an U-type sound. Something to say is that each of these vowel letters are named from the corresponding full vowel plus the vowel letter. So Kometz hey, everything is named like that, except for this one is the one exception. You have a vav, a dot to the left, and this is the vowel letter shurik. And then you have the yod, could indicate an E-type letter or an I-type letter. Now you should notice that these pronunciations are exactly the same as the full vowel pronunciation. The only distinction here is the E-type vowel letters always say A as in they. The corresponding full vowel, segol and sere, if it's just by itself, default is although, as I said, sere can lengthen to A in some contexts. But these vowel letters, they always say A as in they. Now, let's see how did we get to the point where the Hebrew text looks the way it does now. So if you see the word horses, it'll look like this, susim, but that's not how it was originally written. Originally, Hebrew was written down as a strictly consonantal text, so you would just have the consonants, samech, samech, mem, sofit, and those who knew Hebrew really well knew how to say susim. But along the way, scribes, as they were copying texts and writing new texts, there came this new practice of using those vowel letters to indicate vowel sounds. And so beginning about 800 BC, they started to introduce these vowel letters more and more until about 200 AD, and the Hebrew Bible by that time had received all the vowel letters that it currently has. And so what they would do for the word susim is they would split the 2 samechs and put this vav here to indicate the u vowel sound. They would take a yod here and split the samech and mem sofit to indicate an E sound. But this yod and this vav, people would know, well, the vav isn't the v sound, the yod isn't the y sound. So the vav is the u sound, the yod is the E sound, and they knew how to pronounce that susim. And that worked as long as Hebrew was a spoken language. But shortly after 200 AD, when the canon was closed, the text could no longer be altered because this is a holy text. Soon after that, Hebrew died as a spoken language, and by about 800 AD, the Masoretic scribes, those in charge of preserving this the reading tradition of this holy text, they were concerned that the people no longer knew how to read their own language. And so it was then that they developed the system of vowel pointings. And so they put a dot in the vav. They put a chirik before the yod to indicate these as vowel letters, and they made the vowels. They also made accent marks and other things to tell people exactly how to read these words. Now, knowing that those vowel pointings were added after the vowel letters, which were added into the consonantal text, that explains a discrepancy in how words were written. So in your Hebrew Bible that you'll have these words that are usually written with these vowel letters, a chirik yod, a cholam vav, a shurik, but you can see these forms. So this is how they're usually written, but sometimes they'll be written with just the corresponding full vowel. So this word, hashlichu, is a command saying you all throw something, and it's usually written with a chirik yod, but here it can be written sometimes with just a chirik. What does that tell you? Well, all the forms here that were written that have the yod, this was the vowel letter yod that was added before that critical cutoff at about 200 AD. But for any forms without that yod, when the Masoretes came along and vocalized, adding the patach here, this dot, the shwa, the chirik, and this dot here, to vocalize it, they could no longer add the yod, and so they vocalized it the same, so it's pronounced the same, but it just looks slightly different. And this is why the Masoretes, this is why they came up with the system of vowel pointings, because they could not alter the text anymore, so they wrote the vowels under or above the text, not inside the text, in between the letters. All right, so for swords, it's usually charavot with a cholam vav, but sometimes you'll see it with just a cholam. Susim with a shurik, sometimes it'll be written just with a kibbutz. So it can, this can trick your eye because the words look slightly differently, but as long as you're pronouncing it out loud, it shouldn't trick your ear. So another reason why to read the text out loud, because sometimes your ear can catch something that your eye might miss. All right, let's look at how do you take a Hebrew word and split it into syllables. There's two rules. One is every syllable begins with one consonant. The other is every syllable has one vowel. So let's pretend that this is a syllable, a kof, with a kametz, and it's pronounced ka, not ak, because the syllable must begin with a consonant. So you pronounce that consonant, and the vowel that's usually written underneath it is pronounced after it. Now, when we talk about syllables, there's a couple terms that keep coming up. One is we call a syllable open if it ends in a vowel. We call it closed if it ends with a consonant. As an example, a very common Hebrew word that pretty much everybody knows, even if they don't know Hebrew, is shalom. Here it is written. Shalom has two consonants, or two syllables. The first syllable, sha, is open. It ends in a vowel. The second syllable, lom, is closed because it ends with a consonant. Let's look at another feature of what the Masoretes did when they pointed the text, is they used the same symbol, shva, to mark two distinct things. So you've seen the vocal shva, which is that reduced vowel. Fun fact, it can only occur in an open syllable. They also use that same symbol not to indicate a vowel at all. We call this a silent shva, and it marks the end of a closed syllable. So it's written underneath a consonant that closes a syllable. Well, how do you know whether or not to pronounce this symbol shva? Good question. This is a little bit simplified, but this will do for now and quite some time in the course. A shva is vocal if it is at the beginning of a word. So this is the word for sheep, kevasim, this initial shva we pronounce, or if it is the second of two shvas. So this is a form that says they will keep something, not a word that we'll encounter for a time, but it's exemplary. Yish meru, so this one we pronounce. If it's not at the beginning of the word or the second of two shvas, it's silent. So this is a word for chairs, and it's kis ot. It's not ki se ot. This is not pronounced. It's a closed syllable, kis ot. Similarly with this one, the first one, it's not yi she, it's yish. Those are the two types of Shva. This is the two types of Dagesh. Now we've seen this symbol, the dot in the middle of a letter, and we've encountered it as what's called a Dagesh call. Call means light, and it marks that alternate pronunciation for Begad Kafat letters. It's called light because it can come or go in a Begad Kafat letter. It's all about where that Begad Kafat letter occurs in a word, whether or not it takes the Dagesh. The Dagesh Chazak means strong. This marks a geminate, a doubled consonant. So if the Dagesh Chazak is in a letter, that letter stands for two instances of that letter, two copies. And it's called Chazak because usually if there's a Dagesh Chazak in a letter, in that word, no matter what form the word takes, the Dagesh Chazak will usually stay. Usually. How will you know whether the Dagesh is a call or Chazak? Well, this is a rule that works across the board. Very simple, and it's nice that it doesn't have the exceptions. The rule is it is a Chazak if it is preceded by a vowel. Otherwise, it is a call. So, as example, here's the word for chair, kiseh. This Dagesh in the kaf, is it a call or Chazak? Well, we look to see if there's a previous vowel, and there's not because the kaf begins the word, so it is a Dagesh call. It marks the hard pronunciation for a Begad Kafat letter here, k. There's another Dagesh here in this samech, and this is a Dagesh Chazak. We look, there is a vowel previously, and so it is that Dagesh Chazak. It marks two samechs. Now with gemination, the first copy ends the first syllable, so kis, and the second copy begins the second syllable, se, so kiseh. Now, with gemination, for modern Hebrew, no longer pronounces these as geminate sounds, and this is actually much like English. English has words that are written with two letters, like butter or summer, but we don't make those as geminate sounds. People pronounce summer as sa and mer. It's not summer, sa, mer. Similarly, with Hebrew, even though this is written as a geminate consonant with modern pronunciation, we just pronounce it ki, se. But it can be helpful to notice when a Dagesh is a Chazak. Later on, that will be really helpful for identifying a class of verbs and some other things. But we'll get to that when the time comes. All right, we have what's called a Furtive Patach. Furtive, if you want to add it to your English vocabulary, kind of means sneaky or secretive. All right, so this is a patach. Remember, a patach is this horizontal A-type vowel letter that's written under the gutturals ayin or chet if the guttural ends a word. So you have this form. This is a verbal form that requires this o, e vowel pattern, but this chet really wants a preceding A-type vowel because it was hard for them to pronounce lokech. So the A-type vowel was kind of a transitionary vowel, lokeach. So it's an ease of pronunciation thing. And it's an added vowel. So if you look at this here, lokeach, my transliteration, this is a syllable that has two vowel sounds. And if you remember, this is actually an exception to one of those two rules for syllables. So a syllable begins with one consonant and a syllable has one vowel. This is a syllable that has two vowels. And this is the one exception. And it's an exception because it's added. It's added in certain places before ayin and chet. Notice that the patach is written slightly off-centered to the right, and that it's the one exception where it's written under the consonant, but it's pronounced before, not after. So it's lokeach. It's not lokecha, which is maybe what you would expect. It's lokeach. How would you ever remember? You're right. You'll always have audio for reading any word, any text. As long as you're a good listener and a good imitator, This is just one of those things that will become intuitive. Let's end by giving some sample syllabification of your first vocabulary words to memorize. So this is the singular form for sword. This is how it's written. This is how I have it broken up into syllables. I'll read the syllables for each form 3 times. Che, rev, che, rev, che, rev. The plural form has 3 syllables. Cha, ra, vot. Cha, ra, vot. Cha, ra, vot. This is the singular form for horse, and it's just 1 syllable. Sus, sus, sus. The plural is 2 syllables. Su, seem, su, seem, su, seem. Here's the singular form chair. This is how you would syllabify it according to the rules of ancient pronunciation. But because modern does not pronounce geminate consonants, let me syllabify it from here. Ki, say, ki, say, ki, say. Now, this is the plural form. Again, 2 syllables. Kis, ot, kis, ot, kis, ot. Here's sheep, the singular form. Ke, ves, ke, ves, ke, ves. And here's the plural form. Ke, va, sim, ke, va, sim, ke, va, sim. And here is, we call it the article. It corresponds to the English word the, and it's just 1 letter. It's 1 syllable, ha, ha, ha. What a great way to end this lecture. Ha, ha, ha. Learning Hebrew is so much fun.